Hi, welcome back to Through Nikki's Lens. I am Nikki and I'm here with one more video for you today. You have completed your studies in Canada and you're ready to apply for your post graduation work permit, but you're curious to know what the requirements are, what the documents are that you need to submit, and how to go about applying online. So let's get into the video. The topics that we will be covering are the eligibility requirements for a post-graduation work permit, a PGWP, how you go about applying for the post-graduation work permit, some of the things that you need to be mindful of, and the general documents that are required. I will also go into a brief demo of what the questionnaire looks like when you and where you should go in the GC key to find how to start the application, to go through the questions to determine if you are eligible based on your answers to apply for the post graduation work permit. So, one of the main things to be qualified for a post graduation work permit is, and to apply for the document, is to have completed your program of study at a designated learning institution. That is an institution that is authorized by authorities in Canada for international students to study, and that institution should be able to award degrees to international students or to students. So you need to also have maintained full-time status as a student while in Canada during each semester of your study of your program. There is an exception as far as I'm aware. In your final term, you're allowed to study as a part-time student. The institution that I attended, I did an MBA program. On paper, it was a 2 years program, but I finished in lesser time than the 2 years. And I maintained my full time status up until my final term when I only had two courses. I studied part time in my final term. To maintain your full time status, you need to be studying at least three courses per term or semester. You would have a study permit or should have a study permit that is valid within the last 180 days before you apply, at least within that range, before you apply for the post graduation work permit. So there are some important things that you need to take into consideration, that if your study permit expires, before you apply for the PGWP, that is, you have at least 90 days to restore your status. That's your status as a student before you apply for the post graduation work permit. And then there are fees associated with that. And I'll go a little bit more in detail in that regard and explain how you can restore your status or the process. If it is that there's a requirement for you to do a medical exam based on the job that the field that you require to go into, it is recommended to have a medical exam done before you submit your PGWP application. And there are some persons, even though their specific job um, or in general, you are obviously job hunting to find a high skill job, it doesn't require for people as a mandatory thing to do a medical. However, some persons want the flexibility because you don't know in what sector you may be able to find a job or the type of job that you will find. As a result, some persons opt to do a medical, submit their PGWP application so that certain conditions can be removed from the post graduation work permit document. That will go a little bit more into that as we progress into the presentation. So the points that we need to keep in mind when we are applying for a post graduation work permit are, well, one of the things is that you can work full time once the final term or your semester ends. So you need to know when you need to stop working. And you need to stop working once you've received your final grades or your letter of completion. In a lot of instances, the letter of completion is, and at least at the institution that I attended, once you get your letter of completion, you should immediately stop working and submit your application online for your post graduation work permit. And then once that application was successfully submitted and you receive the correspondence from IRCC that they have received your application, you may resume working. However, this is under a condition, right? So you can continue to work after you finished your studies only if you already applied for a post graduation work permit and this is with a valid study permit, or you're starting a new program. There are some persons that do 1+1 to get a 2 years, or sorry, to get a 3 years post graduation work permit. Because if you study for 1 year, it's a 1 year post graduation work permit that you're eligible to get. However, if you study a program that is more than a year, and I would say 2 years in duration, you get a 3 years work permit. So, when should you apply for your post graduation work permit? You have up to 180 days after you have graduated or you have received um, confirmation that you have successfully completed your studies. You must submit your application online as soon as you get your letter of completion. And this is simply because officially, once you have completed your studies, you get your letter of completion or your final grades, whichever your school utilize as the what the notification then, or the notice that you have successfully completed your studies, you need to stop working. And one thing that you can do as a buffer to not wait to get that letter of completion to start your application online. As some of you would know, once you start an IRCC application in your GCK account, you have 60 days in which you need to submit that application. So, what I do tell persons or advise persons to do or make a suggestion is, if you know that within a 2 weeks time frame you will be getting your letter of completion or your final grades are due by the institution, I would say go into your GC key, start the groundwork. So you fill out the questionnaire, you answer all the questions. They determine that you're eligible to apply for the post graduation work permit. Then you start downloading the application, the necessary application forms, filling in those forms, uploading any documents that you need to upload with your application, so that you are just get your medical done, of course, if you choose to submit a medical. And then all you will need to do once you get that letter of completion is to ensure you upload the correct document and you make the payments and you submit your application. So should you apply online or should you flagpole? So, gone are the days. Last month, on the 21st of June, persons applying for a post graduation work permit was able to do that at a port of entry, which is a border, like some persons would know it as. That is at the airport or at a land border that connects Canada and the US. And that's the process of flagpoling for an immigration application. However, since the 21st of June, that's 2024, immediately or with immediate effect, the Minister of Immigration, Refugees, and Citizenship Canada indicated that applications for a post graduation work permit can no longer be done at the border, unfortunately, because once you do that at the border, you flagpole, it's a same day process. You get your post graduation work permit in hand. They're saying you must apply online. So applying online does have its benefits. Yes, when persons were able to flagpole, you get that document in hand right away. However, because the application online takes some time to be processed, and you can check what's the processing time at the time that you choose to submit your application. You know how long you are estimated to wait. Um, the benefit to applying online is that it's not when you submit your application for the PGWP that duration starts to count down. It's at the point of approval. So if it is that they take 2 months, a month, 3 months to process your PGWP application and approve your PGWP, it is at that date of approval that your 1 year, if you did a 1 year program, your 3 years, if you did a 2 years program or more program, would start to count. So that is a benefit, and I don't believe that persons should look at the restriction now to apply online as a negative. So just ensure that you start your application in advance. And once you get your necessary documents, you submit your application. You can continue to work, as I mentioned before, as long as your study permit was valid at the time that you um, submitted your PGWP application and you were authorized to work in Canada as a student. So when you're applying online, or completing your PGWP application, must ensure that you have everything that you need. And as I mentioned before, that is to gather all your documents, know what the requirements are, maybe know the process, and this is one of the ways, doing your research in advance to know what it is that you need to do. IRCC has all the necessary resources for every application that applicants would need to submit. There is an instructions guide that you read and you understand every single thing that you need to do when submitting your PGWP or applying for a post graduation work permit. Read that guide to become familiar with the process and what it is that you need to do. Prepare your answers for the online tool. So they will be asking you questions. Know the answers and answer accurately. Know the fees that you must pay. Have your credit card ready and create your online account if it is that, because I know some persons would not have applied for their study permit on their own, so they might not have uh, a GC key. So you can either create that GC key account or ensure that you know your password and login information, your login details to get into your GC key account. And one other thing that some persons might not know, you're applying for a PGWP from inside of Canada. Once you don't have a valid visitor visa, you would need to apply for a visitor visa or a work visa. So once you apply for your PGWP and it is approved, you can then go ahead and apply for a temporary resident visa. That's the blanket term. So apply for a temporary resident visa, and that's $100 currently. And the IRCC officer will determine if they give you a visitor visa that's valid to the, I guess, the expiration of your passport, or they will give you a work visa that is valid to the end of your post graduation work permit. They make that determination. I don't know what they use, but when I applied for my PGWP, thereafter I applied for a TRV and I received a work visa, while other persons applied and they got a visitor's visa to the duration of their passport. So There are some persons that want to remove or change a condition on their post graduation work permit. That is after they would have applied for the PGWP and it was approved. However, well, one of the things that you need to understand is that you need to apply on paper. If it is that you're extending your post graduation work permit, that's if your passport would have expired before the duration that you should have gotten for your PGWP. So they give you the PGWP to the expiration of your passport. Say you did a 2 years or more program and you should have gotten a 3 years post graduation work permit, but your passport was only valid for another year or 2 years, you'll get the PGWP to that validity, and then you would have to apply to extend the post graduation work permit. And that's the only time at present that you can extend your post graduation work permit. So they're saying that you need to apply for this on paper. And if it is that you want to change the condition, so one of the common conditions, I don't know if it's the only one, but the one that I know of is it says on your post graduation work permit that you're not authorized to work in child care, primary slash secondary school teaching, health service field occupations. So this restricts you in a lot of ways. So what I was recommending before is that you do a medical in advance, and the medical should not be done by just any medical doctor, but it should be done by an IRCC approved or designated panel physician, and you will get a IMM form, and you would upload that form with your PGWP application. So when you're extending your post graduation work permit, as I mentioned, you can now only extend if it is that your passport expired before the validity or the original validity that you should have gotten, the 3 years or so forth. The previous temporary policy allowed for an 18-month extension, and this expired in 2023. So a post-graduation work permit, as you is important for you to understand, is a one-time work permit that any international student can get. If it is that you get a 3 years or a 1 year post-graduation work permit and you want to extend your stay or your status in Canada as a worker, you must get an LMIA or any other work permit that might exist. So you cannot get another PGWP. So you have to get another type of work permit to be able to stay in the country as a temporary worker and work. You have made it halfway through the video. Thank you for sticking around. I have some more details that I want to share with you, and I also want to go into the demonstration of how to apply online for the post-graduation work permit. Continue watching. So the general documents that are required to apply for a post-graduation work permit, I'm not sure if you can see at the top, but you need, once you fill in all the answers in the questionnaire on the GC key, you would get a document checklist that is unique to you based on how you answer the question. So they would require certain documents from you. However, I believe that the application form, that's application to change conditions, extend my stay or remain in Canada as a worker, that's the IMM 5710E, is a standard form. The Schedule 1 application for temporary residence, that's the IMM 5257B, is another form. I'm not sure if that's a general form for everyone, but I know that um, I had to fill this out for another application I was doing for my husband. And you would also need to submit a client information document. This is optional, it's not a mandatory document. And there are several instances in which you would submit a document here, and that's if it is that you want to submit a letter of explanation for any reason, you want to submit a letter, you got a job offer, you want to submit that. It's not mandatory to have a job offer when applying for a post graduation work permit, so keep that in mind. If you want to submit any proof of funds, if you choose to put proof that you have funds, anything that you want to put that's not required, it goes into the client information, and you can simply merge all those documents that you will put there. You need your valid study permit, your transcript. When you're doing an online application for PGWP, you can use your unofficial transcript from your institution's portal or website. So if you in when persons were able to go to the border, it was recommended in those instances for them to take an official transcript. However, for online applications, they would have accepted the unofficial one. But if it is that your institution provides your official transcript with your letter of completion, some institutions might not, like the one I attended. If you get that official transcript with your letter of completion, upload both of those if you have the official transcript. You will also need the one of the important documents, your letter of completion that proves that you successfully met all the requirements to have been awarded your degree. You need your passport information page and all the stamps and visas. So you need a photocopy or a scan or whatever of all those necessary pages. You need a recent digital photo, and usually IRCC requires that it is a photo that was taken in the last 6 months. You need your application fees. So the general amount or fee for the PGWP is 255 Canadian dollars. There are instances, as I was mentioned before, where your study permit would have expired and you would need to restore your status as a student because, as I mentioned, you need a valid study permit. So you need to restore your status as a student, and this fee is $379. However, when you are, based on the information from IRCC's website, if you have an expired study permit and you want to submit your PGWP application, you would need to apply to restore your status as a student first. The information from the website suggests that you do not need to submit a separate application to restore your status. You simply need to pay the $379 on IRCC's website for the restoration of your student status and add that receipt to your PGWP application. And that's where I was saying the client information section, you can put that receipt there. So that proof that you paid for the restoration of the status, put that in your PGWP application. Also, when you're submitting the application for the PGWP, or before you submit it, you have to make the payment. So you do both. And if you're doing a restoration of status and applying for a PGWP, you need to pay 634 Canadian dollars in total. I want to encourage you to like this video. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't already done so. Most importantly, share the video with someone that might be interested in this information, someone that you know will be going through this process soon. Subscribe, as I mentioned, if you haven't already subscribed. Hit the post notification bell so that when I post my next video, you will be informed. I want you to come back and continue watching my channel. Let's get into the rest of the information as well as the demonstration of how to apply online through the GC key for your PGWP. Logged into the GC key and I navigated towards the bottom of the page, and there are certain links there. The one that I clicked on was Come to Canada, I believe it was, and it brought me here. So it is asking me to complete the questionnaire to find out if I'm eligible to apply. So it's important for you to read the questions carefully and ensure that you answer correctly. So it is asking me what I would like to do in Canada. So I indicated work. How long am I planning to stay? The options are temporarily less than 6 months, temporarily more than 6 months, or permanently. You should select temporarily because a post graduation work permit, you're still a temporary resident. So it's temporarily more than 6 months. Select the code that matches the one in your passport, JAM, as I'm from Jamaica, and what territory or country I'm in. If you're in Canada, presently select Canada. So I did that. Do I have a family member who is a Canadian citizen or permanent resident and is 18 years or older? I selected no because no is the answer. My date of birth, 1980. So after I hit next, the question on the screen asks, are you a lawful permanent resident in the United States with a valid U.S. citizenship and immigration services? I select no, and then I select next to move to the next screen. The other question is asking, what is your current immigration status in Canada? So you have student, worker, visitor, temporary permit holder, and other options. And I select student because at the time of applying for the PGWP, you would be a student, and then you hit next. It takes you to the other page that asks, do you plan to work on campus? And I select no because I'm not planning to work on campus. I'm no longer a student. It asks as well, are you a full-time student at a participating post-secondary institution and want to work off campus up to 20 hours per week? And I select no. And I just wanted to validate that I was answering the question correctly. Have you recently graduated from a participating Canadian post secondary institution for which your study program was full time and for a minimum of 8 months? And I select yes. Do you work as an essential part of your student permit? And I answered the question there. Have you been told by an IRCC officer that you have been approved in principle for permanent residency? So, no. And basically, I would go to the next page and answer the questions accordingly. And I answered no to the other question. Have you submitted a permanent residence application in Canada? No. Do you have a written job offer? And I selected no. And you answer the questions according to your situation. Do you have an official letter from your school that confirms you completed your study program as well as a copy of your final transcript? And you answer yes, because you need these documents as part of your PGWP application, and you select next. What is your province or territory of, and then of destination? And I would have put British Columbia since I am in BC. And you go to the next page. So it says your results based on the information you provided. The results below indicates whether you may be eligible to come to Canada. So the option would be a temporary resident visa. We're not applying for that at this time. We're applying for a postgraduate work permit in Canada, and you will select continue, and this will take you to create your personal checklist for the post graduation work permit, and you select continue, and it basically populates the checklist, and you on the next page you will see what the required documents to submit are. Have you had a medical exam performed by IRCC panel physician? And this is where I was telling you earlier in the video, if you want to have the conditions removed to say that you're restricted from certain occupations or jobs, then you would have that medical exam done, and you would answer yes in this case, and you select next, and this will allow for a section in the checklist to populate where you would upload the IMM form that you would get from your medical doctor. Do you want to submit an application for a family member? And in this case, if you're applying for yourself, you would say no. If you're applying to extend your spousal open work permit or your child's visitor record or whatever document or whatever status your child has, you would select yes, and then it will ask you further questions. So, are you giving someone access to your application? In this case, because it is a pretty simple application to submit, I would recommend, as far as and as far as I did, was to not use a representative, but if you feel that you need that assistance for whatever reason, then you can select the appropriate option. But in this case, I would have selected no. So, in the past 10 years, have you given your fingerprints and photo, that's your biometrics, for an application? And I selected yes. If you submitted a study permit application, you would have to give your biometrics. So there are fees associated with this application. Will you be paying your fees, or are you exempt? There are different options. So you would say yes, you're paying your application fee, or no, you're exempt. And in most cases, I believe persons applying for the PGWP would have to pay their fees. Are you able to make a digital copy of your documents with your scanner? And I would say yes, and have those documents uploaded. Would you be paying your application fees online? To pay online, you can use your credit card, Visa, MasterCard, American Express, JCB, and other options. And you would select the appropriate answer, yes or no, and then you select next. So it allows you to review your answers. You would see all the answers that you would have put in. Make sure that you read through these carefully, answer the questions accordingly. And if you have made any mistakes in any of your answers, it to the right side of the page, you would notice a pencil icon. You can click on that and adjust the answer to whichever question that you want to correct. Make sure your answers are correct, because this is important and it may impact your application if you do not answer the questions correctly. So it's saying submitting your application. Step 1, use your account. Step 2, save your application, and you scroll down. Step 3, upload your documents, and it is a pretty simple application. So it's telling you the different formats, JPEG, PDF, and so forth. Step 4, pay your fees. And you click continue to get to the document checklist. So it outlines what your document should be, and you can read through these to get any information on what documents or what are the specifications for the documents. So in this section, application forms, and it wouldn't allow me because I was using my phone to scroll over, but the application to change your conditions and so forth, those are the that's the application that you can click on the link. It's highlighted in blue, or it's in the color blue. You can download the application form from there. Supporting documents, your recent educational transcript, your completion of study document, that's your completion letter, your passport, and your digital photo, as well as proof of upfront medical, because I did answer yes that I have done a medical in the past and I would be able to upload it there. Optional documents, that's the schedule one. And in, I guess, in your case, whatever applies to you, you'll get this application or not. You download it, fill in the information, and upload the document. And your client information form, you will attach those necessary documents, merge them if you have to, and put them there. So it outlines the various fees. So $155 for the work permit and $100 for the open work permit holder fee. In total, that is $255 that you would pay for your PGWP. Thank you so much for sticking to the end of the video. Thank you so much for making it through Nikki's Lens, and I'll see you in my next video.